Welcome to our Budgeting One-on-One course. This is your first step to making your financial transformation. So I want to thank you for taking the initiative and taking action in getting the education and training that you need in order to help yourself manage money better and build a foundation for your financial transformation. We'll go ahead and get started. So what is AfroBlock? AfroBlock is an investment education company. We are a company dedicated at helping the finances of average Americans, while more affluent individuals have access to money managers, accountants, and fiduciaries. Many working individuals do not, but they need them all the same. We believe that with our training and education, we can empower individuals to change their financial outlooks to a more positive end. Some of the major issues we are looking to solve is the retail investor crisis, where over 70% of retail investors lose money in the stock market each year, and then the retirement crisis, where 1 of 2 Americans retire with less than $100,000. And so that's reaching, retirement age 65 or more and have less than $100,000 saved up. Really want to tackle those issues and empower people to tackle those issues so they can have a better life. So the goals for this course is just a start. We provide a solid blueprint, but you have to do the daily work in changing your behavior, changing your activity day in and day out to align with your budget and to align with your goals. This course provides you a blueprint, but you still have to do the hard work in following the blueprint. Before we get started, make sure that you have gained access to the Google Sheet budget worksheet, which was emailed to you upon signing in for this course, and then that you also have your bank statements ready. You won't be uploading those statements or doing anything like that, but it's just for you to review. So just make sure you have those 2 things ready. First, we want to start out with some meditation. If you can close your eyes, don't even look at the computer right now. Just close your eyes, try to clear your mind, practice some deep breathing. Inhale fully, exhale fully, just clear your mind of thoughts. And there's a lot of focus on mental health right now, but one of the aspects of mental health is just shutting your brain down, just, allowing your brain to not process information, to not process thoughts, just clear your brain. It's just like, any other part of your body, it needs rest. You can overwork your brain. And a lot of times with, our computers and social media, it's always taking in information, it's always active. And so, meditating, with your eyes closed, you're blocking out the stimulants that your brain has to process. That's something that I think is good for people to incorporate in their lives. It really pays dividends in the long run. So why do we start meditation? Touched on it a little bit, but it's very important for us to unplug. There are so many things in the world constructed to get our attention, our thoughts, our time, and energy. But if we don't actively teach ourselves how to unplug and restrict access to ourselves, we'll never be able to get our minds focused on what is important to us. We'll always be focused on what's important to corporations who want you to buy products, to people who want you to come to events. But it's never focuses on things that are important to us. And so one of the things that we want to achieve in this course is to start the process of changing our mind and how we think. Because if we can change our mind, we can change our actions. And in order to change our finances, you have to change your actions. You cannot change your financial outlook without changing your actions. And so that's one of the things that we want to start to do on this course. So what is budgeting? Budgeting is the practice of aligning limited resources with future goals and desired outcomes. Budgeting allows us to build a roadmap to arrive at our desired financial destination for our financial journey. Budgeting allows us to hone in our goals and how our resources can achieve them. Becoming financially free is more than knowledge of budgeting or different budgeting methods. It's about changing our relationship with money, building up discipline, gaining control over our life, and changing how we live our life to match where we want to get financially. So these are some common reasons that people fail at budgeting. Typically, you can basically sum it all up is because your average person, they see budgeting as or numbers on a sheet of paper, and it really holds no weight to them. And your people who are successful at budgeting, it's not like that. Those numbers actually have meaning to them. And so one thing that we're going to do is attach, the numbers on these sheets of paper to a bigger goal. Now you're not thinking of, oh, it's just numbers on a paper. It's the house that I want to buy, or it's, the life I want to live in 5 years, or it's the financial freedom that I want to attain in 10 years. So that's what we're going to strive to do later on as we go through this course. And in contrast, governments tend to be vastly successful at budgeting. When I speak about governments, we're talking about your state and local governments. If you're outside of the United States watching this course, in America, we have states and local city governments, and they all have their own budgets. And very, very rarely do you ever see states or cities going bankrupt. And why is that? Because they're successful. One, because the budgets that they make are one public. So the community, they're under a lot of scrutiny from the community. They're under a lot of scrutiny from media, and then they're legally binding documents. And so, there's a lot of accountability in sticking to the budgets that are set. And then if they want to change their budgets, that's a process. It's a process. It has to go through the budget office, has to go through city council, has to go through the community. So it's not just, it's not like when we want to spend money that we set aside for something else or a purpose that it wasn't set aside for. We can do that with just the press of a button on our phone. But governments don't have that luxury. And then one of the big things they do is they change their actions to align with their budget immediately. If it's been decided that budget cuts have to be made, whether it's shutting down a facility, reducing staff, that's done immediately. If a city shuts down a recreation center, the day after that decision is made, there's a chain around the door. It's fenced off, it's gated off, and then it's demolished. And so, budgets are followed up with action and immediate action. And I think that that's something that we can utilize in our private lives and in our private finances. So let's get to work. Get your bank and credit card statements ready and open up your budget worksheet. We're going to start filling those out. So first things first, make sure you make a copy of the budget worksheet. It was emailed to you upon purchasing this course. So you just click File, and then make a copy, rename it, whatever you want to name it. Then use that new copy edition of the budget worksheet. Don't use the original. So once you have that done, start with listing your daily activities and use your bank account and credit card statements to match the cost of those activities, and then provide an estimate of the time that you spend on those activities. Of course, you can pause the webinar and come back. That's the purpose of having this course. We provide that a luxury for you, or that freedom for you. One of the reasons we do this exercise is that a lot of times we don't realize what we're spending our money on and where our money is going. Oftentimes when we check on our bank account, it's just to see, do we have money to last till next payday? Do I have enough to buy what I'm about to buy? Things like that, but we're not really, analyzing and understanding where our money is actually going. And in order to be able to save, that's something that we kind of need to understand. By completing this exercise, you'll start to see, get a picture of where your money is going. As you list out your activities, you should see the spreadsheet self-calculating in the middle and on the far right. Make sure to group your activities together. So if you went to happy hour at 6 different places, don't say happy hour at Cheddar's, happy hour at Eddie V's, happy hour at Cheesecake Factory. Just put happy hour, not the location. That way, the table on the far right will group it all together. If you went on 5 dates, don't say date with Jessica or went to date at Common Table or date at Spatch. Don't put a location or like the person, just put or date night. And so that way it groups it all together, and so that you have a cumulative picture of what that activity is doing. If you buy work at if you buy food at work, put work cafeteria and just put, hey, how much all those meals cost. Things you want to look out for as you build out your activities is, do you have a lot of micro purchases? A lot of companies now, their business models are to get you to spend an amount of money that you don't notice you're spending. That's kind of with streaming services, even with like some Amazon stuff, they can get you to give them, $12 here, $15 there. That'll result in them making, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. And so you really want to look at things like that. Do you have a lot of subscriptions that you're not using, memberships that you're not using? Are you overindulging on vices and pleasure seeking? Because, I'm not here to tell anybody that you can't have fun and that you can't enjoy life. But if it's coming at the sacrifice of building your financial future, then these are things you want to cut back on. On that far right, under column K, you have your justification column. And so under each group, provide a justification for it. Hey, why is my car insurance $170 a month? That's, you have full liability. Maybe you've been at fault on a wreck, so it's just higher right now. Why do you spend the amount of groceries you spend? Why do you spend the amount on happy hour? Provide the justifications for it. And one thing to do is say, if someone else was reading these justifications with these spends, would you be embarrassed or not? That's typically a good way to judge if it's a weak or strong justification. So it's just something to keep in mind as we move through the exercise. Then, like I said, you want to review everything. If you need to make some cuts, then you need to look at the items with weak justifications, and those are ones that can be reduced or removed altogether, depending on how it impacts your quality of life and how it impacts your life in general. Now we're moving on to goals and our new budget. If you don't have any financial goals to start with, these 4 are your foundation for your finances. First, get out of debt. You want to start with paying your higher interest rate credit cards and loans. Pay those down as fast as possible. If you have a car note, you want to, try to pay that off as fast as possible. The reason why we want to pay off car notes is, the value of your car is always going down. It's depreciating, every single day. Even though your insurance on that car is always going to go up, that's another issue altogether. You want to get a car that you're not paying for anymore. That's going to be one of the first things, because once you pay your car note off, then that's money that can be used, to pay off other debt, or that you can start using to save. And so it's a car note is typically one of our lower hanging fruits to say, hey, can you add another $30 to your payments, or $20 to each payment, or whatever the case may be. You end up paying it off faster. You will really be amazed at how the impact that just an extra $30 or $50 a month has on paying your car note off. But like I was saying, you want to get rid of your higher interest rates. Some of these credit cards, loans of a minimum of 15%. Maybe you're someone who's taking out payday loans or something like that, or private loans. Some of those interest rates can be up to 20 to 30%. So you absolutely want to pay those off as soon as possible. The next item is building up an emergency fund. We're going to go into further detail, your emergency fund and expense fund and retirement in the course. But we just want to, note that these are the items that you want to be working towards if you don't have any financial goals. So on your daily activities or SMART goals, we're going to open up your goals worksheet or your goals worksheet tab and just fill in your top 3 goals for 2023. What are your financial SMART goals? We only do 3 because part of budgeting is prioritization. And if you start, doing 5 goals or 10 goals, it gets hard to, prioritize, and it gets hard to actually focus on achieving any of them. So we just start with 3, and that way, you can allocate your time, energy, and resources effectively to achieving those 3. When we say SMART goals, we want them to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So, maybe, hey, I want to pay off my car by the end of this year. If you just got your car last year, you have to really look, hey, is that realistic for me? But if you've been paying on it for a couple of years, and depending on your level of income, that might be a more reasonable goal for you to achieve. So just want to list out those 3 goals. So a reason why we use SMART goals is that oftentimes whenever we talk about goals, it leaves a lot of, they're very vague, and they're not connected with any action items that will achieve those goals. So what's the typical goal that everyone has? I want to lose weight. And the reason why most people don't ever achieve that goal is because it's not specific, it's not measurable, it's not attainable, but it's measurable. Sometimes it's not even attainable on their lifestyle. And then it's not time bound. A better goal is to say, hey, I'm gonna work out 4 times a week to lose 20 pounds. That's measurable. You can measure how many times you go work out. You can measure, have I lost 20 pounds yet? It's specific, and it's attainable. It's not time bound, because there are some things when you're talking about your body, there's some things that you can't really put a time on. Your body's going to burn fat and lose weight kind of at its own pace. And so it doesn't really make sense to put a time on those type of things. But that's just an example of, how you make that goal closer to a SMART goal as opposed to just the vague goals that we typically set. So on your workout, on your worksheet, write your main goals. Once again, if you don't have financial goals, then those need to be your financial goals. You can use, some non-financial goals that you might have for the year. Part of the reason why we budget is that so that we're, working towards achieving our goals just in general. That's why we look at how much time is being allocated towards certain activities. Because if you have a goal, hey, I want to learn a new language, and you find out that you're only spending 30 minutes a week studying a new language, that's something that you want to look at and you want to adjust moving forward. And then include your action items that you're going to do to achieve that goal under each item, under each goal. And this is just an example of what an action item could look. Then really want to consider what current daily activities need to be changed in order to achieve your goals. So we listed all our activities, and so which one of those are aligned to your goals, to achieving your goals, and which ones are not. And that goes back to the justifications. Adjust the ones that are not aligned to your goals. Just that simple. And then you can list your financial SMART goals. Like I said earlier, just go ahead and make your financial SMART goals your goals. So on your new budget, this sheet focuses on connecting your new actions with your new spending amounts. Once again, you cannot change your finances without changing your behavior. Here you're going to insert your revenue over. I'm just going to walk through and add that in the video. Enter your average monthly revenue that you get paid. I'm just going to do an example of that. So these are some things to consider when you are making your new budget to ensure that you stay on budget. If you make changes that result in reduced socializing, then it's unlikely that those changes will last if you don't find an activity to replace it. These are just, some common things that we have to keep in mind just as human beings. If you want to quit smoking, the reason why most people struggle with smoking is not only are they combating, the nicotine, but they're the motion of lighting a cigarette, putting it to your mouth. They have to find something to replace kind of that motion with. That's just something in general to consider. If you're cutting something out of your life, out of your activity, what are you replacing it with? So that's just something to keep in mind as you're making changes, because we want these changes to be lasting changes. It doesn't do any good to start a new habit and you can only keep it up for 2 weeks. We want these to be continuous and long-term changes so that they have the desired effect on our life. These are going back to our financial goals. Once again, paying off debt, start with your credit cards, personal loans, and then make sure that you are paying more than the minimum payment. If that's all you're paying on your credit cards or loan payment, it's going to extend the amount of time that you're paying on it, and you're going to increase the amount that you borrow. Like you'll be paying sometimes, 2 and 3 times more back than what you borrowed originally. So you definitely want to make sure that you're paying those loans and credit cards down. If you have multiple credit cards with balances, maybe you want to explore transferring all those cards onto one balance. Kind of consolidating your debt. And what that does is stops you from getting hit, 3 different ways. If you have 3 credit cards, stops you from getting hit, with interest 3 different ways. And now you only have to worry about one interest payment or one interest accumulating. So that's, one of the benefits of transferring your existing debt to one credit card. So here's a common problem. What do you do if you're spending too much? Now, this is for people who, after they have, made adjustments to their budget and their lifestyle, but it's still coming up short. One thing that we have to accept is that there are no magic bullets to changing your finances. Either spend less money or make more. But you have to look in the mirror and deal with which one of those is going to be easy. But if you're struggling to make ends meet, is that easy to live in? You have to ask yourself that. These things continue. I can guarantee you the decisions that you have to make as time goes by, they get harder to make, and the options don't get any better. So it's better to handle these things early on. Make the tough decisions, make the tough adjustments, because in the long run, it's much harder there are people who are 70 years old, and the decision they have to make is, hey, do I have to go back to work, or do I stop taking some medications? Do I eat less? I only eat one meal a day because I don't have the income that I used to have. Those are tough decisions to make, and we want to avoid those by starting to make those. Making tough decisions when we're young and early on to give us a better future. Here's some other things that you can do to reduce some of your expenses. And very few of these are, happen overnight or happen immediately. But it is something that if you work on it and you make it a priority, it will pay off in the long run. You can improve your credit score. We can contact you with a law firm that specializes in getting things removed from your credit card, from your credit report. If you want to look at one of these credit repair services, go ahead. I would just advise using an attorney because you're going to be paying for those credit repair services. And most of the times you end up having to write all the letters and do all those things like that to the people on your credit. And oftentimes it doesn't result in anything coming off your credit. So if you're going to pay for something, you might as well pay for something that works. That's why, if that's something that you want to look into, just let me know. Shoot me a message in the Facebook group, and I'll get you in contact with a law firm that specializes in credit repair. You can renegotiate your bills. I do this every so often with my car insurance. I basically just tell them, hey, I'm not paying over $200 for insurance. If that's the only option, then I'll just cancel the policy and go somewhere else. But those are things that you want to look at, see if you have some room to negotiate any of your bills. Explore cheaper alternatives. Are there cheaper energy options? Are you paying for cable that you could, just pay for a streaming service? Things like that. Explore cheaper alternatives. Are you paying $1,000 a month for a car note? Could you ride a car that's only $500 a month? That's a consideration to make here. Can you refinance to a lower mortgage rate than what you're currently? And then once again, we talked about consolidating debt earlier. Do I have a revenue problem? If you're in a situation where you have a revenue problem and you've been getting by with borrowing money for emergencies and things like that, one thing you have to ask yourself is, what if people start telling me no? Then what are you going to do? If you're struggling to, make ends meet, once again, there are no silver bullets. There is no easy answers, but you want to explore some of those avenues for making more money. Some of the signs that you have a revenue problem: if you have less than 20% of your income after you reduce your spending, you should have about 20% of your income just as free money at the end of the month. If you're borrowing money to cover regular expenses, if you don't have any savings, and if your credit card debt continues to increase, those are typically signs that you have a revenue problem. If you're a business owner or you work commission and you're filling out your revenue, you want to be very conservative on that. And you need to leave room for, just life happening. If you are a business owner and said, hey, I'm going to increase my sales, or I'm going to increase my profits by 30%, by spending 3 more hours every day doing marketing. Well, what if you end up having a kid or a baby, then all of a sudden you're not able to dedicate that extra time, and you've gone ahead and made a budget expecting higher profits and higher revenue, but you're not able to do that because, you've got something else taking up the time that you thought you were going to have to allocate to it. So just be conservative on this. If you are a business owner or work commission, use some averages from previous periods to generate for your revenue forecast. That way you leave yourself a cushion for anything that might come up in life. These are some solutions to stay on budget. It's just you have to define what works for you. That's one of the major keys because everyone is different. Maybe you need to delete an app from your phone because it's so easy, for you to make a purchase. Maybe you need to delete your cards that are saved in a certain app. That way it just adds a barrier to make a purchase. So instead of just, use this credit card or this debit card, if you delete all those out of your phone or out of Google or whatever it's in, and have to manually input your purchasing information, that's a way to make purchasing, impulse purchases harder on yourself. Because if it takes more time and effort, you're less likely to go through with the purchase. Sticking to your budget, over time, you'll have to make purchases outside of your day-to-day life. These could be, you buying a car, buying a house, buying furniture, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you do not let the salesperson, the realtor, whoever tell you what you can and can't afford. They are there to collect a check. So yes, they'll always, oh, you've got 500 credit score. They can find a way to get you a house, but you want to be kind of smart about that, because with the lower credit score, you're going to have a higher interest rate, and those are typically harder to maintain. So those are just things to think about when you're trying to stay on budget, and you have to, make adjustment purchases. So we've talked about building up your financial foundation and two parts of the foundation: your emergency fund, your expense fund, and we group together as savings. Your AfroBot, we want to reshape how people think of savings because its value is commonly understated. Savings is more of an active defense for your financial journey. Oftentimes people think of it as just money sitting around. We don't believe that to be the case. Before you can invest or build a business, we believe that you absolutely need to have a foundation of saving established. Without this foundation, you'll typically end up just stunning at the growth of your investment in business by spending your profits prematurely. So what that looks like is, if you start a business with no savings, what you end up doing is you'll take profits that are made from your business and spend it on everyday living, instead of reinvesting that money back into your business, because you don't have anything saved up. It's just that you use it. You use the profit from your business to fund just, your everyday living. And we just want to stress to people that you absolutely want to have a foundation set up first. We don't want to just go into investing or having a business. You need to have that foundation of savings built up first. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not just money that's lying around. It is what allows you to invest aggressively, because it keeps you from having to spend, your profits on things that, money is required to spend. One of the big things when we talk about saving is when we look at, big purchases, whether it's buying a house or buying a car. One of the reasons people fall into foreclosure or bankruptcy after making a big purchase, like buying a house, is because they spend their savings to get the house, to get into the house. Now, their expenses are higher oftentimes. Then they struggle to rebuild their savings up. And then life happens, and then they don't have time to financially adjust. They never had a chance to build up their savings. So then, they get behind bills, get behind a mortgage, and that's how the foreclosures happen. So take time to build up savings if you have a big purchase, and especially if it's going to increase your normal expenses. These are two scenarios. You definitely want to be more like person two. This is just an example of why understanding the purpose of saving is necessary. If you don't establish foundation of savings, eventually bad habits will catch up to you. Person one could be a person that doesn't save and then needs a roof replaced, an appliance replaced, a new set of tires. And instead of having savings to cover those costs, pull out money, their investments, and then 4 years later, they don't see any account growth. And that's because every time, they've had more money from their investments, they've seen that as money that they can spend instead of money that's serving a purpose. Instead of seeing it as money that's serving a greater purpose, it's more money that they could spend on whatever they wanted to. So this concludes the Budgeting Masterclass. Please support the company through completing the survey for the course, telling someone you know about the course and how it's helped you, and then joining the Facebook community. So thank you for your time. Thank you for going through, spending the time and effort to get through this course. We feel like you will definitely benefit from it. So yeah, thank you.